My 4-year-old type 1 diabetic daughter was in DKA with blood sugar of 485, and the ER nurse wanted to give her glucose tablets, which would have killed her within hours, when the hospital only gave her a warning. Instead of firing her, I started following her and discovered she'd been asking other nurses basic questions like whether fruity breath meant high or low blood sugar. Turns out she had cognitive impairment and had been working 16-hour shifts updating patient charts from memory at the end of each shift for years. When I brought my 4-year-old daughter to the ER for vomiting, I thought we were dealing with a stomach bug. Mia had thrown up 3 times since I picked her up from daycare and couldn't keep anything down. But kids get stomach viruses all the time, right? Every time she tried to sip water, she would vomit again within minutes. I'm talking violent retching that left her shaking and crying. Her breath had this weird sweet smell that made me nervous. I kept telling the triage nurse, she's type 1 diabetic. I think her blood sugar might be really high. Can someone please check? And the whole time Mia was draped over my shoulder. Her breathing was fast and shallow. The nurse on duty, this woman with long blue hair and the most bored expression I'd ever seen, sighed. Ma'am, it's probably just stress. Kids these days get worked up about anything and everything. I froze, her words circling around my head like sharks. Just stress? My baby's skin was gray and clammy. I'd been managing her condition for months. This wasn't just stress, I insisted. But she's breathing fast and her breath has that fruity smell. Those are warning signs, aren't they? The nurse rolled her eyes and started chewing her gum with her mouth wide open. We'll call you when a bed opens up. Have a seat and calm down. I tried to take deep breaths and even play my 432 Hz sound frequency. But 10 minutes turned into an hour turned into 2. And before I knew it, I had been sitting in the waiting room for 5 hours with no follow-up. Mia was getting worse, barely conscious at points. I kept going back to the desk, but the same nurse brushed me off every time with, still waiting on a room. Eventually, I'd had enough. I stood up to find a water fountain and caught sight of their tracking screen. Listed in green dry erase marker were all the waiting patients. Sitting right there was Mia's name. Beside it, I expected to see the word emergency or room needed, but no. Right there, in plain English, were the words, give glucose tablets and send home. My blood ran cold. Send home? No one had even tested her blood sugar yet. I stormed over to the nurse. Excuse me, but why does the board say give glucose tablets? Her blood sugar is high, not low. Nobody has even tested her. She barely looked up from her computer. The physician already assessed her based on symptoms. He'll start fluids when we get a room. My voice shook with anger. Which physician? No one has so much as looked at her. She finally met my eyes, visibly annoyed. The doctor's been monitoring all the cases. You must have been distracted. I was done playing games. I approached the charge desk and demanded, I need the name of tonight's emergency physician, right now. The desk clerk said, that's Dr. Post Office, currently with a trauma patient. I planted myself where I could see the hallway and waited. When I saw a woman in scrubs with the right badge walking by, I practically jumped in front of her. Dr. Poe, I'm Mia's mom. Can you please tell me why you ordered glucose tablets for her? She stopped and looked genuinely confused. I'm sorry, who? I haven't ordered anything for anyone named Mia tonight. My pulse hammered. She's the 4-year-old with diabetes, vomiting and fruity breath. The nurse said you diagnosed glucose tablets. Her entire demeanor shifted. Glucose tablets for fruity breath? Number absolutely not. Let me see her right now. Dr. Poe crouched beside Mia, noted her breathing pattern, and her face darkened. I need a glucometer and crash cart. This child's in ketoacidosis. I looked back at that blue-haired nurse who had become fascinated with filing paperwork. The blood sugar reading was 485. Dr. Poe told me if we'd given her those glucose tablets, it would have pushed her blood sugar even higher and culled her within hours. I want that nurse away from my daughter immediately, I told the doctor. She nodded and had security ensure it. They rushed Mia to the PICU that night. The doctor said her blood had turned so acidic it was shutting down her organs. Those glucose tablets would have been like pouring gasoline on a fire. The next morning, a hospital administrator came to Mia's room to apologize. She explained that the nurse had confused the protocols for high and low blood sugar and didn't follow proper assessment procedures. Confused the protocols? She almost poisoned my kid. That's when I saw her. The blue-haired nurse in uniform passed right by me. They didn't fire her, just gave her a slap on the wrist and called it a day. That's when I realized my mom was right. If you want something done right, you truly have to do it yourself. 2 weeks crawled by in a blur of hospital visits and sleepless nights. I kept replaying that night in my head, watching Mia's monitors beep steadily as she recovered. The doctors assured me she was doing better, but I couldn't shake the image of that blue-haired nurse casually chewing gum while my daughter nearly died. During Mia's follow-up appointment at the hospital, I rounded the corner toward the endocrinology wing and froze. There she was, Sharon, according to her name tag, walking down the corridor like nothing had happened. She chatted with 2 other nurses, laughing about weekend plans. My feet moved before my brain caught up, maintaining distance as I followed her through the maze of hallways. She stopped at the coffee machine, complained about the new scheduling system, then headed toward the parking garage. I watched from behind a pillar as she climbed into her car, a silver Honda with a diabetes awareness sticker on the bumper. The irony made my stomach turn. The next day, I found myself at the pharmacy near the hospital during what I'd learned was Sharon's lunch break. I pretended to browse the vitamin aisle while she waited at the prescription counter. The pharmacist handed her a bag, and Sharon launched into a story about managing her mother's diabetes for 25 years. She actually told him she could teach doctors about diabetes management. My hands shook as I grabbed a random bottle of vitamins, trying to look busy while memorizing every word. 3 days later, I couldn't hold back anymore. I spotted Sharon at the grocery store near the hospital, pushing her cart through the frozen food section. My body moved on autopilot. I stepped directly into her path. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Sharon's face went from confused to defensive in seconds. She raised her voice, claiming I'd been hysterical and disruptive that night in the ER. Other shoppers stopped to stare, phones appearing in hands. The flash of camera lights made me realize how this looked. Security arrived within minutes, asking me to leave. Sharon played the victim perfectly, dabbing at her eyes while explaining how I'd been following following her. That evening, Emma showed up at my door with wine and worry etched across her face. We'd been best friends since college, but tonight she fidgeted with her wedding ring instead of making herself at home like usual. She explained that Sharon's mother sat on the school board, the same board that needed to approve her teaching transfer next month. Emma's husband had already lined up a job in the new district. They'd put their house on the market. She begged me to let this go, just for now, just until her transfer went through. I stared at my best friend, watching her choose career over truth. The following Monday brought an impossible choice. My lawyer had finally agreed to take the case but needed the retainer fee immediately. At the same time, Mia's endocrinologist called about concerning lab results that required an emergency appointment. The scheduling conflict felt like the universe testing me. While grabbing Mia's medical records from the nurse's station, I noticed the shift schedule posted on the break room wall. Sharon's name appeared in neat handwriting, marking her for evening shifts all week. I snapped a quick photo before anyone noticed. Choosing Mia's appointment meant missing the lawyer meeting. It also meant Sharon had time to act. By the time we returned from the endocrinologist, 3 voicemails waited on my phone. Hospital security had received a formal harassment complaint. Sharon had included the grocery store video, showing me following her through the aisles. The security officer's tone made it clear whose side they'd already chosen. The next morning hit like a tsunami. Mia's continuous glucose monitor alarm shrieked during math class. The school called, panicked about her blood sugar levels. Simultaneously, my lawyer's assistant called demanding the retainer by end of business, or they'd drop the case. Then Carl's number flashed on my screen. My ex-husband's voice dripped with fake concern as he mentioned consulting a custody evaluator about my recent instability. The grocery store incident had somehow reached him already. Racing to Mia's school, I forced myself to appear calm and collected. The school nurse mentioned she'd received a warning from the hospital about a parent who'd been harassing medical staff. She studied me carefully as I checked Mia's blood sugar and administered insulin. Every controlled movement, every steady breath was performative, proving I wasn't the unstable mother Sharon had painted me to be. The irony tasted bitter. By seeming stable, I reinforced Sharon's narrative that I'd overreacted that night in the ER. 2 days later, I overheard nurses at the hospital discussing an incident. Sharon had experienced a panic attack while treating a diabetic child. Several co-workers surrounded her in the break room, offering comfort about that awful mother who'd been stalking her. They painted me as unhinged, dangerous. Sharon had crafted her victim story perfectly. The betrayal cut deeper when it came from Mia. During bedtime, she mentioned the nice nurse with pretty hair who'd brought her a stuffed unicorn during her PICU stay. I'd been too focused on her recovery to notice. Well, nothing quite says medical expertise like a nurse who thinks fruity breath means it's time for a sugar party, while a kid's basically turning into a human lemon battery. The blue hair should have been our first warning sign that things were about to get colorful in all the wrong ways. Sharon had visited my daughter while I slept in the chair beside her bed, planting seeds of affection. Mia defended her, saying the nurse had pretty blue hair and a kind smile. My 4-year-old had no idea she was praising the woman who'd nearly culled her. School pickup became a strategic nightmare. Hundreds of parents crowded the parking lot, but I noticed Sharon's car immediately. The silver Honda sat 3 rows over, windows down. As parents streamed past, I caught a glimpse of papers on her passenger seat. Moving closer while pretending to check my phone, I saw printed emails between Sharon and her supervisor. The subject line referenced liability concerns. One email mentioned the hysterical parent situation. My hand trembled as I took photos through the window. The school security camera captured everything. Sharon's adult daughter, Amy, who taught 2nd grade at Mia's school, reviewed the footage that evening. By the next morning, whispers followed me through the hallways. Amy had suggested to other staff that I might be stalking her mother. The narrative spread like wildfire through the school community. The daycare situation exploded the following week. The director pulled me aside during morning drop-off, explaining that their state funding renewal required school board approval. Sharon's mother held significant influence over that decision. 30 families depended on this center. The director's eyes pleaded with me to consider the bigger picture, to think about all those children who needed care. The message was clear: back off or destroy dozens of families' childcare. My sister's intervention hurt the most. She arrived unannounced, settling onto my couch with the same concerned expression she'd worn 5 years ago. She reminded me about Dad, about how I'd spiraled after his death from a misdiagnosed heart condition. The doctors had missed obvious symptoms, just like Sharon had missed Mia's. My sister suggested therapy, maybe medication. She used careful words like obsessive and pattern, painting my justified anger as mental illness. The Facebook post appeared that evening. The hospital's community group, usually filled with fundraiser announcements and get well wishes, featured a lengthy post about ungrateful parents harassing healthcare heroes. The comments section exploded with Sharon's version of events. Someone shared the grocery store video. Within hours, it had been reposted to 3 local parenting groups. The comment count climbed past 200, each one painting me as the villain. My attempts to find witnesses hit wall after wall. I'd compiled a list of nurses who'd worked that night, planning to contact them individually. Hospital HR intercepted my efforts, flagging them as a harassment campaign. The formal warning arrived via certified mail, threatening legal action if I continued attempting to contact staff members about the incident. Sharon's next move showed calculated cruelty. She traded shifts with colleagues to ensure she'd be present during Mia's routine diabetes checkup at the hospital outpatient clinic. The appointment system showed her special request had been approved. I couldn't switch doctors without disrupting Mia's care continuity. Sharon had trapped me into facing her again. Exhaustion became my enemy. 3 weeks of fighting, documenting, and protecting Mia while managing her diabetes had worn me down. At a restaurant for Mia's friend's birthday party, my shaking hands drew up the wrong insulin dose. I caught the error before giving it, but my fumbling looked like intoxication to the restaurant manager. He called 911, convinced I was hammered and endangering my child. The incident report entered the CPS database before I could explain. Emma's final betrayal came via text. Her husband had threatened divorce if she remained associated with the unstable hospital stalker. She believed something had gone wrong that night, she wrote, but couldn't risk her family. The message ended with an apology that felt hollow. 20 years of friendship dissolved in a few carefully worded sentences. The isolation became tangible. At the hospital for Mia's blood work, other parents crossed the parking lot to avoid me. One mother grabbed her child's hand and hurried past. Later, I discovered the local mom Facebook group discussing me. 847 comments dissected my behavior, my parenting, my mental state. The post title read, "Dangerous Parent Alert," with my photo from the hospital's volunteer appreciation dinner last year. I started documenting everything obsessively. Screenshots, photos, recordings, medical records. My dining table disappeared under color-coded folders. This war would end with one of us destroyed, and I refused to let it be me. Sharon might have the system on her side, but I had the truth. Somewhere in all this evidence was the key to proving what really happened that night. The battle lines were drawn. Sharon had turned my community against me, threatened my custody, and poisoned my daughter's perception. But I'd seen her confusion, documented her lies, and discovered patterns in her mistakes. The real fight was just beginning. 1 month into our conflict, I discovered Sharon had joined the same diabetes support group as my sister. The group met Tuesday evenings at the community center, and my sister mentioned how helpful the new member had been. Sharon had quoted passages from Mia's favorite book during the meeting, details she could only have learned from those PICU conversations I'd slept through. My sister didn't know Sharon's identity until I showed her a photo. The color drained from her face. The grocery store confrontation required police statements from both of us. We sat in separate rooms at the station, each recounting our version of events. The detective administered polygraph tests to both parties. We both passed. Sharon genuinely believed I'd been stalking her. I genuinely believed she'd nearly culled my daughter through negligence. Two truths existing simultaneously, neither canceling the other out. While organizing my documentation, I found my own text messages from that night in the ER. Messages to friends expressing doubt about my concerns. One read, "Maybe I'm overreacting," and another said, "She seems busy." These texts, sent during those 5 agonizing hours, now appeared in Sharon's defamation countersuit. My own words, weaponized against me. The doubt I'd felt in those dark hours became evidence of my supposed hysteria. The custody evaluation began 3 months after the incident. Carl had hired an expensive child psychologist who specialized in high-conflict divorces. During Mia's session, she told the psychologist that Mommy yelled about the nice nurse all the time. She mentioned having bad dreams about blue hair. The psychologist's notes, which I later obtained through discovery, painted me as an obsessive parent traumatizing my child with adult conflicts. My doorbell camera became evidence against me. The footage showed me pacing my front porch at 3 a.m., practicing what I'd say to Sharon at the next encounter. I'd rehearsed confrontation speeches, trying different approaches, different tones. Sharon's lawyer called it obsessive planning and sleep deprivation. The timestamp showed this happened multiple nights in a row. Family court treated my complaints about Sharon as deflection from my own negligent diabetes management. They cited the restaurant incident where I'd nearly given Mia the wrong dose. The judge questioned why, if I was such a vigilant parent, I'd made such a dangerous error. My exhaustion from fighting Sharon became evidence of my unfitness as a mother. Patterns emerged in Mia's medical records. Her MyChart notes showed 3 instances of dosage clarification needed during appointments where Sharon had been present. Each time, the attending physician had to correct medication orders Sharon had suggested. The pattern was subtle but consistent. Sharon's confusion wasn't limited to that one terrible night. Public records revealed more. Sharon's name appeared in hospital board meeting minutes from 2 years ago. The discussion centered on staff retraining needs following unspecified incidents. The minutes were vague, but Sharon was one of 5 nurses mentioned by name. I wondered how many other families had suffered before us. My court-mandated therapy sessions became another weapon against me. The therapist, bound by court order to report to the custody evaluator, documented my revenge fantasies. I'd been honest about imagining Sharon losing her license, facing justice for what she'd done. Those therapeutic conversations, meant to help me process trauma, became evidence of my vindictive nature. I attempted to record Sharon during school pickup. She'd started volunteering for crosswalk duty, positioning herself where I'd have to pass her daily. I held my phone low, trying to capture her harassment. Sharon spotted the device immediately. She called security, citing existing stalking documentation. The principal banned recording devices at pickup. Sharon smiled while the police took my statement. The 3 p.m. pickup routine became psychological warfare. Sharon timed her volunteer shift specifically for Mia's release. I had to walk past her every single day, feeling her eyes on me, watching her interact sweetly with other parents. She'd wave at Mia, who'd wave back enthusiastically. Other parents noticed my discomfort and whispered about the unstable mother who couldn't let things go. An ICU nurse who'd witnessed everything that night finally agreed to meet me. We sat in a coffee shop far from the hospital. She confirmed she'd seen Sharon's confusion, watched her write the wrong orders, but her husband's construction company depended on contracts with the school district. Sharon's mother had already made veiled threats about those contracts. The nurse looked me in the eye and said she'd seen it all but couldn't risk her family's livelihood. Another witness lost to Sharon's family's influence. The hospital cafeteria became a battlefield. During one of Mia's appointments, I realized Sharon had started wearing the exact same scrubs brand I'd described in my complaint. She'd even acquired the same diabetes awareness pin she'd worn that night. When she passed our table, her perfume triggered something in Mia. My daughter's face went pale, her hands shaking. Other families noticed Mia's reaction. Sharon had weaponized trauma responses. A hospital mediator reached out about settlement discussions. Sharon offered to transfer to a different department if I'd drop the civil suit and publicly admit to misunderstanding the situation that night. The offer came with strings attached. I'd have to sign a non-disclosure agreement and issue a public apology. The mediator framed my refusal as prioritizing revenge over my daughter's comfort at the only local hospital equipped for pediatric diabetes emergencies. My investigation deepened. I discovered Sharon had written glucose orders without the required physician approval. Hospital policy mandated co-signatures with within 30 minutes for all medication orders. Sharon's orders that night had never been co-signed. This wasn't about someone else writing wrong orders. Sharon herself had violated protocol, acting beyond her scope of practice. Dr. Chen's voice notes from that shift revealed another layer. He'd left detailed recordings about diabetic emergency protocols for the nursing staff. The system showed Sharon had accessed these notes during her shift, but only for 12 seconds. Not enough time to listen to crucial information that would have saved Mia. She'd had the resources, but hadn't used them. My pursuit of evidence revealed Sharon had been covering for Dr. Banks that night. He'd arrived at work impaired, and Sharon had been trying to manage his patients along with her own. Her heroic attempt to protect patients from an impaired physician had led to cognitive overload. The truth was messier than simple negligence. Sharon was both victim and perpetrator in a broken system. Carl filed for emergency custody after 4 months of legal battles. He used Sharon's character witness statement describing my harassment pattern. My own mother faced an impossible choice: support me and risk losing access to her grandchildren, or maintain neutrality. She chose the middle ground, refusing to take sides. Her neutrality meant I lost childcare during crucial legal meetings. Every court appearance meant scrambling for babysitters. Desperation drove me to Sharon's mother's senior center. I enrolled in the same exercise class, hoping to understand the family dynamics that created this situation. I helped other seniors with their equipment, made small talk about grandchildren. Sharon's mother mentioned her daughter's dedication to nursing despite the long hours and difficult patients. She never mentioned the incident with Mia. I discovered Sharon's ex-husband coached at a gymnastics center. I enrolled Mia in classes there, learning about Sharon's messy divorce through overhead conversations. She'd fought a custody battle over their teenage daughter Brittany. The patterns of control and manipulation I recognized in our conflict had deep roots in Sharon's personal life. Evidence mounted from public records. Hospital board meeting minutes showed 3 glucose protocol incidents during Sharon's shifts over 2 years. Each incident was documented as a learning opportunity rather than a disciplinary matter. The hospital's culture of protecting staff over patients became clear through these carefully worded documents. Carl's custody demands intensified. He filed motions citing my obsessive behavior, using Sharon's statement as supporting evidence. Fighting the custody battle meant missing Mia's appointment with a diabetes specialist who only visited our area quarterly. The missed appointment appeared in court documents as medical neglect. Every choice I made to pursue justice cost me credibility as a mother. 3 months of legal bills drained my savings. Credit cards maxed out while Sharon's crowdfunding campaign for her defamation defense raised $30,000. The hospital community rallied around their own. Comments on the fundraising page called me a privileged parent trying to destroy a hardworking nurse. The financial inequality made quality legal representation impossible. A confrontation at Mia's favorite restaurant went viral on TikTok. I'd taken her for a treat after a difficult medical appointment. Sharon appeared with friends at the next table. The teenage server, who had type 1 diabetes herself, witnessed our tense interaction. Her TikTok about Karen versus his nurse drama garnered 2 million views. Comment sections filled with hot takes from people who knew nothing about that night in the ER. My hospital volunteer coordinator position evaporated after 5 years of service. The official reason cited ongoing legal conflicts with staff. Sharon's daughter Amy's best friend received my position the following week. The message was clear: align with Sharon or lose everything. My attempts to create positive change from within the system had been systematically destroyed. Carl won the house in temporary orders. The judge cited the stable home environment he could provide versus my current instability. I moved back with my parents, sleeping in my childhood room while Sharon received a promotion to charge nurse. The hospital newsletter featured her story of overcoming adversity, painting her as a victim of harassment who'd persevered. My mother's intervention came during Sunday dinner. She begged me to let Mia heal without the chaos of ongoing legal battles. Then she revealed she'd been providing Carl with positive reports about my mental state, trying to prevent him from seeking full custody. Her betrayal cut deep. She believed I was destroying our family with obsession, just like I'd done after Dad's death. My complaints triggered an investigation that caught an innocent new nurse in the crossfire. Madison had trained under Sharon, learning the same shortcuts and protocol violations. When investigators reviewed Madison's documentation, they found errors matching Sharon's patterns. Madison sobbed during her suspension hearing, explaining she'd only followed Sharon's training. I destroyed a young nurse's career to prove a pattern. Madison's fiance's family didn't want association with the hospital scandal. Their engagement ended weeks after her suspension. She posted on social media about losing everything because of one vindictive parent who couldn't move on. The hospital community rallied around Madison, painting me as a destroyer of innocent lives. I continued pursuing evidence, justifying Madison's destruction as preventing future victims. The hospital chaplain who'd counseled me during Mia's PICU stay requested a meeting. He asked difficult questions about forgiveness and moving forward. He suggested that perhaps Mia had survived to teach me about grace, not to fuel a revenge campaign. I walked out mid-conversation, unable to hear wisdom that challenged my pursuit of justice. During my deposition, opposing counsel presented evidence I'd never considered. Security footage showed me leaving the ER twice that night, once to move my car and once for coffee. They painted these absences as abandoning my critically ill child. My explanation about parking meters and exhaustion fell flat. The narrative shifted. I'd been a negligent parent blaming others for my own failures. Discovery revealed the worst truth yet. I'd noticed Mia's symptoms at 6 a.m. that morning, but waited until after my work meeting to take her to the ER. 6 crucial hours lost because I'd prioritized a presentation over my daughter's health. Sharon's lawyer hammered this point. If I'd brought Mia in immediately, she would have been seen before Sharon's shift even began. Sharon's legal team filed an emergency motion to advance the trial date. They cited my escalating harassment, including infiltrating the senior center where her mother exercised. My lawyer was in Hawaii for his daughter's wedding, leaving me with an associate who'd never handled medical malpractice. The motion succeeded. Trial would begin in 2 weeks instead of 2 months. Sharon's deposition revealed her genuine belief in her expertise. 20 years of managing her mother's diabetes without incident had convinced her she understood the condition better than most doctors. She spoke passionately about her dedication to patients, the extra shifts she worked to afford her mother's home care. She'd refused retirement despite eligibility because nursing was her identity. I crossed a line I'd sworn I'd never cross. I lied to Mia about needing to check something at the hospital gift shop, then used her presence to extract Sharon's shift schedule from a sympathetic employee. The employee thought she was helping a concerned mother coordinate care. I'd weaponized my own daughter for information, breaking my promise to keep her separate from this conflict. The transformation was complete. I'd become exactly what Sharon's lawyer described in court filings, a manipulative stalker using any means necessary to destroy a dedicated nurse. The truth of that night mattered less than the truth of who I'd become. Every action I'd taken to prove Sharon's guilt had proven my own instability. Evidence came from unexpected sources. Sharon's troubled teenage daughter Brittany attended the gymnastics center where I'd enrolled Mia. During supervised visits with her father, Brittany mentioned her mother's increasing confusion at home. She'd found her mother's work notes, pages of protocols copied and recopied as if Sharon was trying to memorize procedures she'd once known by heart. I documented these conversations, building evidence through a child's pain. The restraining order hearing took place at the children's hospital. Carl showing up with custody papers after Sharon basically turned into a witness for hire is peak timing. This is basically a golden ticket to full custody while she's sleeping in her childhood bedroom again. Both sides presented their cases in a conference room overlooking the pediatric ward. During a break, we found ourselves in the same hallway, staring at a memorial wall covered with photos of children who died from preventable medical errors. We both had tears in our eyes. Sharon had lost a cousin to misdiagnosed diabetes. I'd lost my father to medical negligence, 2 women shaped by medical trauma, perpetuating cycles of pain. Sharon's countersuit gained momentum. The judge noted my pattern of infiltration into every aspect of Sharon's life: her workplace, her mother's exercise class, her daughter's gymnastics center. What I saw as investigation, the court saw as stalking. My methodical documentation became evidence of obsession. Every spreadsheet, every photo, every timeline demonstrated my descent into dangerous fixation. Everything hinged on finding the traveling nurse who'd worked that night. I'd spent weeks analyzing shift records, cross-referencing schedules, tracking down agency assignments. Finally, I identified her, a travel nurse named Patricia, who'd been floating through the ER during Mia's crisis. Serving the subpoena required hiring a process server and tracking her to her current assignment 3 states away. My past kindness created unexpected leverage. Months earlier, I'd helped Sharon's mother when she'd fallen at the senior center. I'd driven her home, helped her inside, even checked on her the next day. Now Brittany asked why I was being mean to her mom's friend who'd helped Grandma. The child's innocent question highlighted the complex web of connections I'd created through my pursuit. Hospital politics fractured along generational lines. The union supported Sharon, protecting one of their own. Younger nurses questioned the training they'd received, wondering if they'd been taught dangerous shortcuts. The pediatric ward divided into factions. Some saw me as a heroic mother fighting for patient safety. Others saw Sharon as a dedicated nurse destroyed by the system she'd served for decades. My lawyer explained the harsh realities of civil court. We needed only preponderance of evidence, not proof beyond reasonable doubt. But juries favored healthcare workers, especially older nurses who dedicated their lives to helping others. Sharon's poverty, her mother's medical needs, her extra shifts to make ends meet all painted her as sympathetic. I appeared privileged in comparison, a parent with resources attacking a working-class hero. Desperation drove me to call in old favors. Nurses from Mia's NICU stay remembered my advocacy during her premature birth. They'd trusted my instincts then when I'd insisted something was wrong despite normal test results. I'd been right. An early intervention had saved her life. These nurses provided written statements about my medical judgment and maternal instincts, but union solidarity meant they wouldn't testify against Sharon directly. Their statements inadvertently revealed devastating information. Mia had coded twice in the PICU, not once as I'd known. Sharon's error had nearly culled my daughter 2 separate times that night. The second code happened while I slept in the chair, exhausted from the ordeal. Nurses had worked frantically to save her while I remained oblivious. The pattern crystallized. I'd saved Mia from medical errors 3 times in 4 years. My vigilance wasn't paranoia, but hard-earned experience. Patricia, the traveling nurse, voluntarily provided a written statement after receiving the subpoena. She confirmed Sharon had seemed confused about glucose protocols that night. She'd asked Patricia basic questions about diabetes management, questions any experienced nurse should have known, but the statement revealed more. Sharon had doubted herself but proceeded anyway, too proud or too confused to admit uncertainty. The pattern became undeniable. Sharon showed signs of cognitive decline under stress. Her errors clustered during high-pressure shifts. The hospital had never tested her cognitive function despite multiple incidents. She was impaired but undiagnosed, a danger to patients hidden by systemic failures and union protection. My strategy shifted from proving malice to demanding competency testing for all ER staff. Sharon's deposition revealed another crucial detail. She updated all charts at shift end, not contemporaneously as required. This practice, common among overworked nurses, explained timeline discrepancies in Mia's records. Sharon genuinely believed she'd followed protocols because she'd documented them hours after the fact, her memory filling gaps with false certainty. The arbitration hearing approached with both sides preparing for battle. The hospital offered settlement to avoid a precedent-setting trial about cognitive testing for aging nurses. The union couldn't afford to lose this fight. Mandatory testing would affect dozens of senior nurses who'd served faithfully for decades. The systemic implications dwarfed our personal conflict. I presented evidence calmly during preliminary arbitration sessions. My transformation from vengeful parent to patient safety advocate unsettled Sharon's legal team. They objected to my sudden reasonableness, having built their case around my instability. Every measured word word, every professional presentation of evidence undermined their narrative while supporting mine. Patterns emerged from comprehensive analysis. Sharon's errors weren't random but predictable, clustering during double shifts and high-stress periods. The system had failed her as much as she'd failed Mia. Chronic understaffing forced cognitive overload on aging nurses who should have been protected, not exploited. The evidence painted a picture of institutional negligence enabling individual errors. Both sides prepared for final arbitration, knowing only one of us would emerge professionally intact. The conference room filled with stakeholders, hospital administrators, union representatives, patient safety advocates. 50 staff members would witness our confrontation, forced to choose sides publicly. The break room alliances would become formal positions affecting hospital policy for years to come. The arbitration room felt like a pressure cooker. 50 pairs of eyes watched as I laid out my evidence methodically. Sharon sat across from me, her hands trembling slightly as she reviewed her own notes. The break room alliances manifested physically in the seating arrangement, nurses clustering by generation and loyalty. The NICU nurses' statements hit harder than expected. The arbitrator's eyebrows rose as she read about Mia coding twice that night. Sharon's face went ashen. She genuinely hadn't known about the second code. Her lawyer objected, but the medical records confirmed it. 2 near-death experiences from 1 medication error. My revelation about saving Mia from medical errors 3 times in 4 years shifted the room's energy. The younger nurses exchanged glances. How many other vigilant parents had they dismissed as paranoid? The pattern I'd established wasn't obsession, but experience. Every time I'd trusted my instincts, I'd been right. Patricia's written statement became the turning point. The traveling nurse had documented Sharon asking basic questions about diabetes management during Mia's crisis. Questions like whether high blood sugar caused vomiting, whether fruity breath meant hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia. Fundamental knowledge any ER nurse should possess instinctively. Sharon's lawyer tried damage control, but Patricia had been thorough. She'd noted Sharon's confusion about insulin types, her uncertainty about ketoacidosis symptoms. The traveling nurse had assumed Sharon was testing her knowledge, not genuinely confused. The truth was more troubling than malice. I watched Sharon's face crumble as she realized her own limitations. 20 years of managing her mother's stable type 2 diabetes hadn't prepared her for pediatric type 1 emergencies. Her expertise was an illusion built on routine care, not crisis management. The recognition destroyed her more than any accusation could. The arbitrator called for a recess. In the hallway, I overheard union representatives arguing. Some wanted to protect Sharon at all costs. Others worried about liability if they defended demonstrable incompetence. The younger nurses pushed for reform, while senior staff circled wagons around their colleague. During the break, Sharon's mother arrived with Mia in tow. Carl had arranged it, thinking Mia's presence would make me appear unstable. Instead, something unexpected happened. Sharon's mother struggled with her glucose monitor, her arthritis making the buttons difficult. Without thinking, I helped her test her blood sugar, our shared experience with diabetes creating an odd moment of connection. Sharon watched this interaction, tears forming. She saw what I saw, 2 families destroyed by the same broken system. Her mother needed her income for medical care. My daughter needed safe hospitals. Neither of us could win without the other losing something vital. The afternoon session revealed Sharon's documentation practices. The arbitrator reviewed timestamps showing she routinely updated charts hours after patient interactions. Memory-based documentation, reconstructed through exhausted recollection rather than real-time accuracy. Every nurse in the room recognized the practice. Many shifted uncomfortably. Hospital IT authenticated security footage showing Sharon accessing and modifying charts at shift end. Not malicious falsification, but dangerous standard practice. She genuinely believed her reconstructed memories were accurate. The pattern of post-incident documentation stretched back years, normalized by overwhelming workloads. The evidence painted a damning picture of systemic failure. Sharon worked 16-hour shifts that night, covering for 2 absent nurses. No breaks, no support, just an aging nurse pushed beyond cognitive limits by chronic understaffing. 50 people crammed into one room to watch 2 women argue about medical mistakes. Sounds like the world's most depressing reality show where nobody wins and everyone needs therapy afterwards. Her errors were predictable, preventable, and ultimately institutional. Sharon's mother provided unexpected testimony. She admitted her daughter had confusion spells after double shifts. She'd begged Sharon to retire, but they needed the income for home health care. The arbitrator asked about these spells. Sharon's mother described finding her daughter staring at medication bottles, unable to remember basic protocols she'd known for decades. The neurological evaluation results arrived by courier. Sharon's lawyer objected, but the arbitrator admitted them. Mild cognitive impairment, exacerbated by stress and fatigue. Not dementia, but measurable decline in processing speed and working memory. The kind of impairment that made complex medical decisions dangerous during high-stress situations. Sharon broke down completely. She hadn't known. The confusion, the uncertainty, the need to copy protocols repeatedly. She'd attributed it all to normal aging. The union representatives looked stricken. How many other senior nurses were silently struggling, too proud or too poor to retire? The arbitrator ordered a comprehensive review of ER staffing patterns. The data revealed a nightmare scenario. Senior nurses routinely worked double shifts, covered multiple stations, and made critical decisions while cognitively compromised by exhaustion. The system didn't just enable errors, it guaranteed them. My lawyer presented our final argument. We weren't seeking Sharon's destruction, but systemic reform. Mandatory cognitive testing for all ER staff. Strict limits on consecutive hours worked. 2-nurse verification for pediatric emergencies. Changes that would protect both patients and healthcare workers. Sharon's team countered with financial realities. Cognitive testing would force dozens of senior nurses into retirement. The hospital couldn't afford to replace them. The nursing shortage meant choosing between impaired nurses and no nurses. They painted me as privileged, demanding perfection from an overwhelmed system. The union representatives split openly. Younger Younger nurses supported reform, seeing protection in mandatory testing. Senior nurses saw discrimination, forced retirement, and poverty. The generational divide that had simmered throughout our conflict erupted into open argument. I made a choice that surprised everyone, including myself. I addressed the arbitrator directly, proposing a compromise. Mandatory testing coupled with supportive transitions. Nurses who couldn't pass cognitive assessments would be reassigned to less critical roles, not terminated. Medical records, patient education, administrative support, positions that valued experience without risking lives. Sharon looked at me with something like gratitude. The proposal preserved dignity while ensuring safety. Her mother wouldn't lose healthcare. Mia wouldn't face another confused nurse in crisis. It wasn't justice, but it was progress. The arbitrator asked Sharon directly about that night. She admitted she couldn't remember clearly. The 16-hour shift, the absent colleagues, the impaired physician she'd covered for, it all blurred together. She'd reconstructed events based on routine, not memory. The glucose orders had seemed right because that's what she always did. The hospital administrators huddled, calculating costs. Reassigning senior nurses meant hiring replacements for critical positions. But the alternative was more lawsuits, more damaged children, more grieving families. The financial argument shifted from avoiding change to managing inevitable transformation. Carl's presence throughout the arbitration backfired spectacularly. He'd expected to see me raging, unstable, vindictive. Instead, he witnessed methodical presentation of evidence and compassionate compromise. His custody argument weakened with every reasonable proposal I made. The final decision came down to implementation timeline. The hospital wanted 5 years to phase in cognitive testing. I pushed for immediate implementation with a 1-year transition period. We settled on 18 months, with testing beginning immediately for new hires and phasing in for existing staff. Sharon would be among the first tested, by her own choice. She wanted to know the truth about her capabilities. The results would determine her future role, but she'd keep her pension and healthcare regardless. It wasn't the vindication I'd originally sought, but it protected future Mias. The arbitrator mandated Mia's protocol, 2-nurse verification for all pediatric diabetic emergencies, simple, implementable, and named for the child who'd nearly died from preventable error. Sharon supported it publicly, her endorsement carrying weight with resistant staff. As we filed out, the hospital's division was visible. Clusters of nurses argued in hallways. Some saw necessary reform. Others saw age discrimination disguised as safety measures. The battle I'd started would continue long after our personal conflict ended. Sharon approached me in the parking garage. No words exchanged, just mutual recognition of what we'd both lost and gained. Her career in emergency medicine was over. My reputation in the community was destroyed, but Mia would live, and other children would be protected. The custody battle shifted dramatically. Carl's witnesses had painted me as unstable and obsessive, but the arbitration transcript showed a mother channeling trauma into systemic change. The judge ordered joint custody maintained, citing my appropriate advocacy for our daughter's safety. Emma reached out tentatively. Her teaching transfer had been approved, but our friendship couldn't recover. 20 years of trust had shattered over career concerns. She apologized again, but we both knew some betrayals cut too deep for reconciliation. Madison, the young nurse caught in our crossfire, found work at a clinic. She thanked me, oddly enough. My complaint had forced her to confront dangerous practices she'd been taught. She was retraining properly, becoming the nurse Sharon should have been. The Facebook group slowly shifted narrative. The dangerous parent alert post remained, but comments evolved. Some parents shared their own medical advocacy stories. Others questioned whether difficult parents might sometimes be right. The conversation I'd forced was uncomfortable but necessary. Hospital implementation began immediately. The first cognitive assessments revealed troubling results. 15% of senior ER nurses showed measurable impairment under stress. The union negotiated fiercely for supportive transitions, using our arbitration as precedent. Sharon transitioned to medical records review. Her decades of experience helped identify documentation patterns and training gaps. She found purpose in preventing the errors she'd once made. Her mother's care continued uninterrupted, funded by Sharon's preserved pension. Mia's quarterly endocrinologist appointments became routine. No more strategic scheduling to avoid Sharon. We passed occasionally in hospital corridors, 2 women forever linked by one terrible night. Neither of us got the justice we'd wanted, but both got what Mia needed. 1 year later, I accepted a position on the hospital's Family Advisory Council. My reputation as the crazy stalker mom had evolved into the parent who changed everything. Not redemption exactly, but purpose born from pain. The reforms worked. Pediatric diabetic emergencies saw 0 medication errors in the first year. 2-nurse verification caught 3 potential mistakes that could have been fatal. Other hospitals began adopting similar protocols, citing our arbitration results. Sharon and I encountered each other at the hospital's annual safety symposium. She presented on documentation practices. I spoke about patient advocacy. We sat on opposite sides of the auditorium, but our messages aligned. Systems fail, people suffer, change requires sacrifice from everyone. The war between us had ended not with victory, but with exhausted compromise. Sharon kept her dignity and pension while losing her clinical role. I gained systemic reform while sacrificing my community standing and closest friendship. Neither of us emerged unscathed, but Mia's protocol would protect countless children. In the end, we'd both been right and wrong. Sharon had made a fatal error born of systemic failure and personal limitation. I'd pursued justice through methods that destroyed innocent careers and relationships. The truth was messier than either of us had wanted to admit, but Mia lived. Other children would live. That had to be enough. Subscribe for more content just like this. I appreciate all the love.